לינו, תסגרי את ה...
Hi, I'm Yaakov Katz, and welcome to the Jewish People's Podcast by JPPI. Last night, the U.S. and France put a ceasefire proposal on the table, calling after a year of rocket fire from Lebanon for an end to the war. Conveniently, this is happening just a few days after Israel finally started striking back at Hezbollah. There was the pager attack attributed to Israel. There's the taking out of Hezbollah's cruise missiles and other sophisticated weapons, and of course, the elimination of some of its top leaders. Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, is finding it pretty lonely up there at the top in Beirut. For a few hours this morning in Israel, the political scene seemed a bit chaotic, as members of the coalition threatened to leave the government if Netanyahu capitulated and accepted the 3-week ceasefire offer. On today's episode, this is what we're going to talk about, all things North. Should Israel accept this offer? What would it practically mean? What is really happening in the North right now? And what would a win even look like in a wider war with Hezbollah? In addition, we can't forget Gaza, where the mission has yet to be accomplished, and 101 hostages remain in Hamas captivity. I'm joined today by retired IDF Colonel Kobi Marom. Not only is Kobi a resident of northern Israel, but he was a brigade commander in Lebanon back when the IDF still had a presence in what was known as the security zone. He's today one of Israel's leading defense commentators and analysts on Hezbollah, an expertise which I'm sure he'll tell us he acquired from years of combat. So Kobi, thank you so much for being with us today. It's really a pleasure to have you. And I just want to start with, I guess, what's most present for you. You live in the north of Israel. It hasn't been a simple year over the last year. I mean, just tell us what the situation is at the moment.
Well, actually, I live in the Golan Heights. Thank you, everybody. It's an honor to be with you this morning. Yeah, it's become a very tough year. I live in the northern part of the Golan Heights, in a small village, a mile from the border. And the Upper Galilee region and the Golan Heights become in a very tough situation in the last couple of months. Unfortunately, rockets all over, drones. And we do have a strategic problem when 70,000 people were evacuated. You know, I visited Metula and Manara and other small communities along the border. The damage there is just unbelievable. I mean, and I think when we talk today, Yaakov, about the escalation and the Israeli offensive over Lebanon, we have to ask a very tough questions. Why it started today and not a couple of months ago? I mean, the major effort of the IDF actually completed in February, maybe March. So we had, as part of our commitment to the people in the north, to operate this attack over the Hezbollah a couple months ago, define the war objective and go forward. Right now, I think we had a dramatic change in the northern front. Israel is initiated. Israel's attack, we regain our deterrence, we killed the majority of the high-rank position around Nasrallah. You're right, he stay alone. We do have an Iranian general next to him, advise him. But the bottom line, that's the toughest hour that the Hezbollah ever had.
Right.
And that's why it's an amazing opportunity for Israel, because in those pagers and communication devices attack, this amazing cyber attack, actually, we have over 1,000 commanders of the Hezbollah that were injured out of the game. We had to use this opportunity and attack the centers, the strategic centers of the Hezbollah.
But Kobi, let me ask you a question though, based on what you just said before. I mean, what you mentioned how January, February, March, Israel pretty much achieved a lot of its goals in Gaza. But we didn't initiate a war in the north. We let Hezbollah continue to target places like Metula, Majd al-Shams, not far from where you live, 12 children murdered in a Hezbollah rocket attack. Why didn't we act sooner? Why did we wait till this last week?
I think it's a terrible failure of the Israeli cabinet. It should be earlier. There's no question. I mean, there's no reason why we had to suffer and evacuate and get so many Hezbollah attacks in the last 12 months. You're right. I think it had to be. By the way, we have a very tough argument inside the war cabinet, and even the IDF leadership and the Minister of Defense offer to start it earlier. I think that's the Israeli. Unfortunately, the cabinet decided to continue to be focused on Gaza. That was a terrible mistake. But now we're here fighting, get many achievements, and I think we have to use this opportunity and keep going and attack and destroy the Hamas, the Hezbollah capability. Now, the offer that we had this morning to stop the fire for 3 weeks and then start, it's going to be a terrible mistake if Israel is going to accept it. Why? Because I agreed to negotiate with the Hezbollah to have an agreement in Lebanon, and that will be based on withdrawal of the Radwan and Hezbollah forces northern to the Litani River, and again have a demilitarized zone like we have in UN Resolution 1701 that was take place on the summer 2006. I totally disagree, and that's going to give a lot of advantage to the Hezbollah because they will have a very expensive time to reorganize the SAM following the Israeli attacks. We have to continue the momentum and attack their headquarters, their missile sites all over, those accurate missiles. And in my point of view, Yaakov, even operate a ground forces attacking southern Lebanon. This is critical because we must destroy the Radwan infrastructure in those villages along the border, because if they will keep them there, it's just a question of time that they can come again and be a real threat and try to operate October 7th in the north. So this is critical in my point of view as an expert. Destroy by ground forces attack those infrastructures.
Okay. So, but I want to ask you about the news from today with the ceasefire proposal, because, you know, one of the things also that we can't ignore, Kobi, is that Israel's now in this war with little international legitimacy, right? If like after October 7th, for example, the whole world was horrified by what Hamas had done in the Gaza border and gave us definitely international legitimacy to go into Gaza. The fact that that evaporated or disintegrated over time could have been expected because the world never stands too long with the Jewish people in the state of Israel. But we're going into this now, even though you'll say, what do you mean? 11 months, they've been attacking us. It's obvious that we need to retaliate, but the world doesn't see it that way. So there's a ceasefire proposal on the table. France and America, two allies, saying take a pause for 3 weeks. What's your opinion?
Look, with all the respect to the amazing support of Biden administration and France, but specifically Biden who gave us an amazing commitment and amazing support in the last 11 months, our commitment to the people that were evacuated from the north is much stronger. With all the respect, I think if we will not destroy the Hezbollah capability along the border, people will not come back. I'm telling you, we will not rebuild our communities. People must feel safe. Now, I'm telling you, what we call UN Resolution 1701 actually said something very simple, Yaakov. Demilitarized zone in southern Lebanon between the Litani and the Israeli border, and we will have multinational forces. By the way, we have a wonderful Spanish brigade next to Metula. They enjoyed the Israeli sun. They had a wonderful paella for lunch. Did they stop anything? Unfortunately not. They did not stop the rearming process, and they did not do anything when the Hezbollah deploy next to Metula. So the lesson that we have to listen is if we're going to see another rearming process, we have to attack the rearming process tomorrow and do not allow the Iranians to rearm the Hezbollah. Number two, if they're going to violate the agreement, we must act. Those are the lessons that we must, and nobody's going to do it for us. The IDF should act to send a clear message. The game is over. Now we're going to do whatever we had to defend our people. Not allow the Radwan forces, which is the special forces of the Hezbollah, deploy next to Metula, Zorit, and other communities. The game is over.
I want to ask you, though, I mean, you've been vocal in the last few days here in the Israeli media talking about the need for a ground offensive inside Lebanon, how it's not enough what the Air Force has been doing, which we have to say has been very impressive, right? It shows amazing intelligence. I just wish we would have had this prior to October 7th in Gaza. But put that aside, it shows that when the IDF was focused and was getting putting the right resources, it was able to gather really remarkable intelligence on Hezbollah and has been able to do some amazing things from the air, but that might not be enough.
Definitely, you're right. Look, even in the Second Lebanon War 17 years ago, we have learned the lesson that with all due respect to the Air Force attacks, the airstrike cannot destroy everything. We cannot win just with airstrike. We need, now, in this complicated situation in the south, Yaakov, the Hezbollah, by purpose, they build their Radwan forces infrastructure inside the villages, under the ground. So the majority of them, we cannot destroy and explode them without being there. We must clean this narrow belt of 2 or 3 miles from the Israeli from the border, so the people that will call them later, hey, come home, now it's secure, you can come and rebuild your community, they will understand exactly that we destroy totally. So the ground, which let me tell you something else. We got our divisions that ready right now along the northern border got a lot of experience in fighting Gaza in the toughest battlefield that we ever had. I don't think it's a complicated mission to occupy this narrow belt 2 or 3 miles, clean it up, and that's going to be a clear message to the Hezbollah. Nobody's going to come again, be on the Israeli border and become a threat in the future to our people along the border.
But does that mean, Kobi, a presence of Israel inside Lebanon? I mean, you spent most of your military career on the ground inside that security zone. It's not particularly popular right now in Israel.
Part of the narrative in this argument inside the Israeli public opinion is the fact that many people are asking a tough question about the present for 18 years in Lebanon. But now, I don't think we've learned the lesson. We must occupy some Lebanon, destroy it for a few weeks, and withdraw to the international border. We plan, and that's the right thing to do, to defend our country on the international border. But before that, we have to destroy those infrastructures. I don't see any plan, even from the cabinet or the military leadership, even thinking about staying in Lebanon. No, it's not going to work.
So then we go in there for a few weeks, we clear out southern Lebanon, we take out the forces, we remove the threat from the border, and then in the day after, if they try to return, we continue to operate. We don't hold our fire like in the past.
Respond immediately and do not have a restraint policy like we had before the war. We have to change the whole strategy. We must be determined, ready, and act, and do not have a restraint policy. That the perception of the other side was very clear. Israel is weak, and we can keep going. Unfortunately, we did not respond for a terror attack. We did not respond for a new deployment of the Radwan just next to our communities. And I hope we're going to learn those lessons.
But I have to ask you, Kobi, I mean, you're a Golani soldier, right? You spent a lot of your time. You know what it means, boots on the ground on the battlefield. Gaza, we've lost a lot of soldiers. Right. We've succeeded, but we've also paid a painful price as an army and as a country. In Lebanon, the assumption is that Hezbollah is better trained, better armed, better entrenched. And do you think Israel, I mean, I'm curious how you look at what that battle will look like on the ground and how it will be perceived back home.
I don't think it's going to be a complicated battle. I'll tell you why. The majority of the Radwan forces, unfortunately, already withdraw northern to the Litani. So with a heavy airstrike, it's not going to be a complicated mission. I think it's easy for those divisions with it. A couple of days, they're going to clean up this area and send a clear message to the Israeli people. It's not a big deal. It's much easier than to maneuver our troops inside Gaza. Much easier, Yaakov. So with a heavy airstrike, artillery, before boots will be on the ground, I don't think we'll pay high prices. And this is an opportunity that the majority of the Radwan forces, unfortunately, evacuated from the region. That's very important.
Right. So I want to ask you also about Nasrallah specifically. You know, this guy has been around since, 1992 when he replaced Abbas Musawi, who was the prior head of Hezbollah. Should Israel, in your opinion, try to target him, take him out? Is he a target that Israel should be after?
I think we should target Nasrallah, but the most important thing is, as a strategy, Yaakov, how we can bring Nasrallah to the point in his decision process that he understands that the prices that are going to pay are too high for him to survive. And I think we're almost there. I mean, the Iranians who actually fund and rearm the Hezbollah for so many years with their ideology also, actually, that's the most valuable and expensive project for their national security. So they want to keep, in the end of the day, they don't want a total war. They want to keep Nasrallah with their capability because the major goal, Yaakov, why they build Hezbollah is to deter Israel to attack the nuclear project. So in the end of the day, they will love to continue the escalation, the attrition war, but they don't want a total war because they want to keep Nasrallah as a strong capability next to Israel as the major tool against Israel. So right now we have the Iranians leadership that say we're not going to be involved in this escalation right now. Nasrallah is stay alone, but with the Iranians, he tried to see what is the point that he must stop and do not lose the majority of this capability and stay alive and stick on the control Lebanon. Don't forget that he controlled the government, he controlled everything in Lebanon. So
right,
in the end of the day, the Iranians want to keep Nasrallah as the major enemy for Israel, as a very strong division in their national security strategy.
But I want to ask you, so on the Iranian, issue, because I was thinking about this today, that, if I go back to Yom Kippur War, right? So there's no question that in the Yom Kippur War, Israel was obviously surprised. There was the intelligence debacle. There were the losses, but Israel eventually won that war, taught the Egyptians an important lesson. And that's what pushed them eventually to come to Camp David and to make a peace treaty with Israel. So you saw that when you win on the battlefield, if it's done right, it can lead to also a political resolution. It's not just a ceasefire. With Hezbollah, though, they will just rearm. The real enemy here is obviously the Iranians, and they're not getting that memo. So how do we change that?
Well, unfortunately, when we talk about the Iranian regime, the radical Iranian regime, who doesn't care about human life, doesn't care about international law, and the Hezbollah as well, it's really tough to even dream, Yaakov, about any option of negotiation in the future right now. And I think you're right. The Iranians control the situation. They rearm their proxies. They manage the war in 7 different fronts against Israel, and they become very successful in the last 12 months. To be honest with you, they did an amazing job. And the bottom line, they didn't pay almost any prices. I will tell you more than that. On their attack on April, they crossed every red line from the Israeli point of view by launching 500 missiles and drones to Israel. And unfortunately, the Israeli retaliation was almost nothing. So the bottom line, if you talk about deter Iran, they understand that the game is over. Now, United States and specifically Israel is going to retaliate and respond. That's why now they said, no, we're not going to be part of this escalation. We have an economy. We negotiate with the United States about another nuclear deal. So I don't see them right now. They've become a very successful, managed this war for a year. Now, I don't think they understand they're going to pay very tough prices for their country, for their economy. That's why Nasrallah is going to change his strategy and stop the war. Even Sinwar will continue to fight, and those are good news for Israel. Is it going to bring our hostages back? No. The tough decisions are on the Israeli cabinet table. Are we going to go back, in my point of view, Yaakov, to a Netanyahu proposal from May 27, which is a very brave and unbelievable, very tough proposal, but that's the only option to go forward. They have a very tough, stop the war, withdraw from Gaza, be focused on the Hezbollah and the Iranians, and get our people back. That's what we should do. Now, is the situation in the north support this strategy? Yes. Why? Because with our offensive over Lebanon, we regain our deterrence. All the players across the Middle East, they see different Israel attacking an amazing cyber and intelligence operation. And that's why the Iranians just said yesterday, their leadership, we're not going to be part of this escalation. So if the Iranians will be outside of the game and the Hezbollah will have a ceasefire with Israel, Sinwar is going to be alone. So his dream to have a total war all over is not going to work. So maybe that's going to push him to renegotiate with us about the hostages. But again, it's on the Israeli table. If we're going to have, and Netanyahu is going to take a very tough decision to go forward back to his proposal, that's the only option, in my point of view, that we'll see our people back home.
I got to ask you, Kobi. I mean, you've been serving in the military. You started service in the military probably late 1970s, and you were in the army up until early 2000s. Hezbollah was then. Hezbollah was during your service. Hezbollah is still there now. I mean, does it not get a little depressing to some extent that this is just we're not able to finally put an end to this?
My PhD is about the Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon in May 2000. And I'm going to spend a semester in the state to compare between the American withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021 and the Israeli withdrawal on 2000. By the way, the same failures, unfortunately. So the bottom line is, the problem is the Israeli cabinet for years, for decades, prepare a restraint policy instead of taking tough decisions. We could destroy the Hezbollah on the early 80s and 90s when there were just a few hundreds.
Right.
Now we have 50,000 with amazing capability, 200,000 rockets, accurate missiles, drones, cyber capability, that's a special forces unit. So it's all about leadership and tough decisions. Unfortunately, we could change the history. We could do it much better. And with our restraint policy, for 2 decades, we allowed the Iranians to rearm Hezbollah and create this terror country next to Israel with a mess. That's why we have to be much tougher today and do not give up and continue to destroy their capability. Because if not, next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see another road of rearming and another challenge for Israel.
So I totally agree with you, by the way. I mean, that needs to be a change to the Israeli policy. But here's the flip side to that, right? Yes. It's a slightly depressing, is that what we're essentially saying here is that, okay, we have this round now with Hezbollah. We're not going to completely destroy them. We're not going to completely, eliminate all of them. We'll get to some political ceasefire, potentially push them away from the border, whatever it might be. And then in the day after, when we see them come back in, we're going to have to fight right away. So basically what we're saying is that Israel's just going to have to fight for the foreseeable future. No, that's a sad reality to some people.
I think the reason why the war objective is not to eliminate and have a decisive victory, because it's really tough for the IDF after a year of fighting in Gaza to have another war to destroy the Hezbollah capability. Yaakov, by the way, have to attack Beirut and be there with boots on the ground. That's too complicated for Israel after a year of fighting in Gaza. We need time to reorganize our troops, to get ammunition, to build a new industry. We need time, like a year or two. But I think the lesson that we have learned from October 7th, that we cannot continue with this restraint policy. It doesn't matter if it's in the south, in Gaza, or in the east, Jordan River, or in the north with the Hezbollah. We must change the whole strategy. We are fighting terror organization, and we cannot allow those terror organizations to be a real threat against Israel. That's the lesson we must learn. So it means that I would say that we have to initiate next a year or two, when we reorganize our troops to attack and destroy the Hezbollah capability. It's possible as a preemptive attack, surprise them. Not after a year of fighting in Gaza that our reserve unit just got a third call. And I'm telling you, even the regular army need time to reorganize themselves. So that's not the time to achieve a decisive victory. But that's something that our leadership has to put on the table and plan it for the near future. If you look 2 or 3 or 4 decades ahead, Israel cannot continue with this restraint policy. We have to change the whole nature of our strategy and decided that those the terror organization will not be anymore along our border. That's the lesson that we have to learn from October 7th.
So I want to ask you, Kobi, before I let you go, just on Gaza for a moment. Now, you mentioned the May proposal that had been put on the table and the option of a potential hostage deal. It seems that Hamas is no longer has put up new demands. Sinwar is, offline, can't really get into contact with him. Is he alive? Is he wounded? Is he dead? Who
Right,
knows?
right.
But let's say that somehow something happens in the north, it radiates down south, a deal is again possible. Should Israel take that deal? Should Israel take a deal that in the south leads to a ceasefire that sees Israel withdraw from Gaza?
Definitely. I'm telling you, it's a very tough deal. I know the details. It's a really tough deal to release thousands of terrorists, withdraw from Gaza, and stop the war. But I must tell you, Yaakov, we have an amazing achievement. We destroyed the majority of the Hamas capability. One of the mistakes that the Israeli cabinet did that we did not decide who is going to take over. Now, if you do not decide who is going to take over, you unfortunately you decided that the Hamas is going to stay for a while. So this is something critical. I think it's not just our commitment to the people that we did not defend them on October 7th, which is I'm as a commander feel about the soldiers and feel very upset about the civilians that they were there and were kidnapped from their housing. It's also a strategic opportunity to be focused on the major challenges. Number one, increase dramatically the readiness against Iran, which is the major enemy, which means the strategic axis with the Sunnis countries against Israel. Now, I'm not excited from the Palestinian Authority, but I think if you have to decide it between the terrible Hamas and the Palestinian Authority just to manage the civil life, not the security, the civilian life in Gaza, I would go there and make the Hamas outside of the game. Yes, put another Palestinian government. That's what Israel should take for the future. Stop the rearming, have an agreement with the Egyptian, build an obstacle on Philadelphia Road. There's some principles that we have to learn the lessons. Rafiq Gate and Philadelphia Road should be blocked. There's no question about it. And there is a chance after 17 years of fighting with the Hamas that we can change totally the situation along Gaza. Yes, but the critical point is to go forward with the hostages deal. Yes.
I'm not going to get you into trouble and start asking you, though, about the politics, because everything you just said, which I agree with, it just gets stuck when you look at the coalition that Netanyahu currently has at the moment. So, makes it a little tougher to implement. But Kobi, I really want to thank you for joining us. It was great to have your insights.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. And just to all our viewers and our listeners, thank you very much for being with us. You can find us every Monday and Thursday. And in the meantime, Shabbat Shalom and soon a Shana Tova to everyone. Thank you.